Welcome to the Hobby School podcast. Whether you're a seasoned hobbyist or just getting started, Hobby School is the perfect place to learn something new. My name is Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I'm your host of the podcast. But before we jump into our episode for today, the only thing I ask is that if you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend and give us an honest review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us get out the content to more people. I also want to invite you to get on our wait list for our next Hobby School Online Learning Summit. These are free to attend, and you can find the link to join at hobbyschool.com, which is also in our podcast show notes. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. And today, my special guest is Marc Thoma. Marc, I'm super excited to chat with you today. We're going to be talking about beginner woodworking tips for the aspiring creator. And before we get started in all the good questions I have for you, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and how you help people in your woodworking business?
Thanks, Destiny. Glad to be here. So I come from a German background, and my father was actually a carpenter in my native country of Germany, and that seems to have rubbed off on me. And so I've actually combined my passion for gardening and growing food for my family with building a lot of outdoor structures using our Western red cedar, which is native here on the west coast of Canada, where I'm living. And in winter, it's fairly wet here, so I don't really want to do much work outside. So I've actually set up a garage workshop as well, where I started building indoor creations out of wood, various different species of wood. I built my own bathroom vanity out of cherry when I realized that I couldn't find the right one that I wanted at the right price. And now I have lots of plans, of course, and big dreams of replacing a lot of the furniture in my house with custom built solid wood replacements.
So you kind of caught my attention when you said I built my bathroom vanity when I couldn't find what I was looking for. And I can tell you, we redid all of our secondary bathrooms this year, and I had troubles too finding, finding a vanity that I thought was built well and was, kind of what we were looking for, which was more of a farmhouse style, which is kind of what we have. So right. I love that's kind of got you started in this. And I know that the listeners here are curious about woodworking and, a lot of different ways they can use it in their home and do different things. What is your favorite project that you've ever completed or worked on?
So I think it's a toss-up between my outdoor projects that I've done for my garden. I've built raised garden beds. I've built my own greenhouse. And I've also built an arbor that used to be for my grapes, but now is actually for my new kiwi plants. So the outdoor projects have, been big ones. But I think, again, I'll go back to that bathroom vanity that I built because it was the first time that I ever built something like that. As I mentioned, we couldn't really find what we liked. We found the construction of most of them was kind of subpar with the wrong types of materials. When we asked to upgrade our materials, we were told, oh, well, that'll be another, $200, $300, $400 more. And so basically I just said, okay, I'm going to build it myself. I got out 3D modeling software. I measured everything, make sure it would fit. And then I basically just modeled it out the way I wanted it to be. And then I went to a local lumber yard here and got some cherry lumber. And yeah, it took me about a month, maybe 2 months at most to build it on the weekends and evenings, but I got it done. It's not 100% perfect, but I learned a lot from it. And we have a beautiful functioning bathroom vanity for probably at least, I would say, a third of the price of what we would have had to pay for.
And you say it's not 100% perfect, but I could probably tell you if I was looking at it, I would say it was
Yes.
100% perfect.
Yeah, it's typical that a woodworker will find their own flaws in their projects. It's, like with anything else, like an artist probably does the same thing when they paint a painting. You know where your flaws are, but unless you mention it to someone else, they probably won't see them. So, but again, it works really well. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And that cherry really turned a beautiful reddish brown. Just from exposure to sunlight. Cherry does that, which is really nice. I even built a small floating shelf as well from the same cherry because I had some left over. And so, we've got a small shelf above our toilet where we have store a few things on. So it's very nice. Yes.
Well, I definitely want to, I'd love to see a picture of it. And I'm sure you have a
Mhm.
picture on your blog post, on your blog
I
somewhere.
think I might have a picture somewhere. Yes. Yeah, I didn't actually, this was before I started Pacific Coast Woodcrafts. So I didn't actually, take lots of photos and be able to document it. But I think it's the kind of thing that I think I will build again. Like you mentioned, secondary bathrooms. I have a secondary bathroom that I actually would like to replace the old vanity that's basically made from just some old plywood into something, that's obviously sturdier and looks better and is something where I can, again, even further perfect the craft of building a vanity.
So let me ask you this. I know, and I don't know a lot about this topic myself. I'm
Mhm.
not a builder. I haven't done any woodworking or anything like that, but I do know from talking to people that having the right tools,
Mm.
really make the difference. Can you tell us a little bit about the tools that you own, or you think anybody who wants to get into woodworking and wood crafting, what kind of tools do they need to get started?
Yeah, and I think this is the most expensive part of the hobby. I mean, there are other hobbies where it's kind of the same idea. Like if you're, into golfing, you have to buy, all your golf clubs and golf gear and that. So with woodworking, you do need to buy, obviously tools. I find that you can actually sometimes buy them new when they're on special. So, if one of the local tool places or big box stores has a special on, you might be able to get something for half price in some cases. And then buying them used on like Facebook Marketplace or other online used marketplaces is actually not a bad idea. So I do own a table saw, which I bought used. I actually knew someone at work who was getting rid of their old table saw, so I got it off of him. I've got a miter saw, which is new. I've got a bandsaw, which I also actually got through Facebook Marketplace. It's an old Delta 3-wheel bandsaw, which actually works quite well. It's just a little bit harder to source the blades that go into it because they're a certain length. I've got a drill press, which I bought new. And, I have some handheld power tools like sanders and drills. I have also quite a few hand tools, not all the ones that I want yet, but one of my biggest needs really is to get a decent Japanese pole saw that I can use for cutting. There are sometimes occasions when you need to cut something that a power tool like a table saw doesn't work that well for. So having some hand saws, chisels to sort of clean things up properly is always important to have too.
So, Mark, let me ask you this. What is the first thing that someone should do if they wanted to get started? Their interest, you've kind of piqued my interest. So there's some things I want to do
Hmm.
around the house. I
Yeah.
don't really own any tools. So what are some of the first things that you would recommend that somebody like me, and maybe even somebody a little bit more advanced than me, should do to get started in woodworking?
Yeah, I think one of the best things to do is to start watching some videos on YouTube, especially of the simpler projects. There are some YouTube creators out there that are doing some of the simpler projects, which, don't take a long time to build. You don't need as many tools. They're not, using a lot of wood, so it's a little bit less expensive to put together, just so that you get familiar with some of the processes and the tools that you'll need to use for your own projects. But you have to be careful that you don't get sucked into watching YouTube videos all the time. Sometimes that happens to me. You want to watch a few videos, maybe gather together some tools and wood, and then make some projects based on those videos. And you have to keep in mind that every project that you make will get better. And then as you continue making projects, you'll encounter maybe a project that you want to do where you think, oh, I don't really know how to do that particular aspect of the project. And that's where, again, you do some research. You may find a YouTube video of someone that's showing you how to do that, or maybe a blog post, or maybe find a good book in a bookstore that will teach you how to do that properly. And then, you'll learn as you go along.
So let me ask you this. In my garage, I have a place where I could kind of set up a woodworking type place. It's a 3-car garage and we only use, part of it. What are some must-haves that you would recommend? So, if I was wanting to set up something like that, what do I need to go get? How do I need to set it up?
Yeah. So depending on where you're setting up, you'll have different needs, but the most important, one of the most important needs is good lighting in your workshop so that you can see everything clearly. It's also for your own safety so that, you can see what you're doing. You're not, you don't have shadows in the way that might cause you to injure yourself. So LED lighting, especially now, is really inexpensive. There's so many different options. So you can, some of the LED lighting is just literally plug it into an outlet and you can put it up on your ceiling and have really good lighting. And then you want to have a decent temperature in your workshop. You want it to be regulated in some way so that it's not too cold, not too hot. Obviously, a lot of woodworking generally is done in the wintertime when the weather's not as good. So you want to make sure that you're not having to, bundle up too much and have it comfortable so that you don't have cold fingers, and then it makes it a little bit harder to sort of feel what you're doing. A lot of people will install a mini split heat pump in like a detached building, or if you're actually have like an attached garage, then sometimes the attached garages are already heated, and other times you can tie it maybe into your existing house's system. You need good power, so you need to have enough outlets spread out around the shop so that you don't have to use extension cords, which can be a tripping hazard. In my case, I actually got a sub panel put into my garage so that over time I can have more outlets added as I accumulate more tools. The other important thing is to have a fire extinguisher for safety reasons, so that in case ever something were to happen, you could hopefully be able to deal with a fire, at least a small one. And you want to have good dust collection so that you're not breathing in wood dust, which can be not good for your health. So you want to make sure you've got a good air quality in your workshop. And then, you have tools, you have wood, make sure you have adequate storage. So you can repurpose old kitchen cabinets to store stuff into. You can use pegboards to store small tools, and you can get like special racking for lumber so that you can have a small stash of lumber for projects.
Which kind of brings me to the next question is, where do you recommend we get lumber for the woodworking projects? Is there a place that you go? It sounds like you might even get some from local trees that you have. I don't know if they're on your property.
I would love to.
Well,
I would love to. Yeah.
Well, where do you recommend?
Well, yes. I mean, we are here on the west coast of Canada, so a lot of our lumber is sort of more along the line of softwood lumber, such as Western red cedar, which I mentioned before. So I go generally for like the cedar and that I go to a home center or a big box store that we have locally here. Usually the quality is okay. You kind of need to pick through the lumber there because you don't always find the best pieces. So I do look through the lumber, make sure nothing is too warped, make sure there's no damage to the boards themselves. And then you practice practice basically with, the cheaper lumber. You can get pine boards, for instance, again, from your big box store to practice with. But then once, you've gotten a bit more experience and maybe you have a little bit extra money to spend on, a particular project like I did with bathroom vanity, then you go to a hardware dealer. And your hardware dealer will be able to, they'll have more exotic woods, they'll have a larger selection. They have more knowledge as well. So if you're looking for a particular quality of wood, they can help you pick out the right wood for the right project. And then you can, start getting lumber from there.
So before we hang up here, what are some of your top tips for a beginner woodworker to help them get started and but really just keep things simple? We all want to keep things simple
Hmm.
and make it
That's
easier
true.
on ourselves.
Yeah. So the first thing is choose smaller projects within your abilities. So don't, start off by building a bathroom vanity or, building a huge deck in your backyard. Start with a smaller project. Maybe you do a cutting board for your kitchen, or you make a small little sort of side table for your living room. And then as you progress with your abilities, then you can start tackling sort of the larger projects, like in physical size, but also the more complex projects. And along those lines, you want to choose projects that have a little bit simpler construction with no complicated joints, so that, again, you can build up your abilities as you work on different projects. And don't worry if you don't have enough tools. Many projects can be built just with a few tools, providing that you take it nice and slow. More expensive professional grade tools mainly allow you to work more efficiently, sometimes more accurately, but it's usually more efficiently. So you don't necessarily need really expensive professional grade tools when you first start out. Don't aim for perfection. As I mentioned, my bathroom vanity has a few flaws in it. Your first projects will have a few flaws. It's very hard not to, make your sort of beginner projects and not make some mistakes along the way. But even, the professionals, if you really ask them, they can point out where every flaw is in their project, and they're not 100% perfect either. Take safety seriously. Make sure you invest in the proper safety gear, which is usually called PPE, personal protective equipment, and make sure to use it. So things like safety glasses, ear protection, dust masks, or a respirator if you're applying finishes. And also be careful that you're not wearing baggy clothes, tie up long hair and things like that, to make sure that you don't get stuff caught in equipment as you're working. For finishing your projects, try a simple rub-on oil or wax finish. There are many to choose from. They're easy to apply. A lot of them are actually food safe now. So if you're making uh, kids' toys or cutting boards that'll have food contact, then they're safe to use. And they're easy. They're not as complicated as having to spray on finishes and things like that. If a part is not working out, save time and frustration, and just toss it in the scrap bin and remake it. You'll find that the second time around, things just seem to go smoother. And on that note, don't use expensive lumber. As I mentioned, to build at the beginning, you can use construction grade lumber or pine for your beginner projects. They're relatively cheap, easy to find, and you won't necessarily feel bad if you need to scrap it and make a new part. And so avoid the exotic hardwoods when you first start, as they're very expensive. And as I mentioned, keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace or other online used marketplaces, because sometimes a woodworker has unfortunately passed away or they've downsized, and you can get good quality tools for a great price. And sometimes you can even make a package deal where you can get a whole bunch of tools for, a very good deal. And then the most important thing is have fun, take breaks, and take your time. Sometimes when you're knee deep in a project, I know, you'll be rushing to try to finish it, and that's usually when mistakes happen, and sometimes also when the injuries happen. I often will work only just for an hour or so on a project every day for about a week until it's done. And I know that if I get too deep into a project, like I sometimes do, I actually forget to eat or drink, and I get tired. And, that's when you start making mistakes. And so those are kind of the top 10 tips that I have.
Yeah. And I loved what you said about choosing smaller projects to start
Mm-hmm.
with. And
Mm-hmm.
the example that you gave with just doing a cutting board for your kitchen.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, that would be
exactly.
perfect. I would love to do something like that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And it just, the cutting board project is good because it allows you to kind of, prepare the wood ahead of time, making sure it's straight, making sure it will fit together without any gaps, and then gluing it together, and then, sanding it down, getting it nice and smooth, and putting on a beautiful finish. So it kind of covers all the different aspects of what you'd normally then do in a larger project, but just with something where it's easy to handle. You don't need much space, right? It doesn't take up much space as you're working on it. So, and that's the problem I had with my vanity, is that took up a lot of space in my garage. So, I had to juggle things around to keep it to keep from tripping over it and so forth.
so, Mark, can you let the listeners know where they can find you? And I think you also have a free gift for them.
Mm-hmm. So my website is at pacificcoastwoodcrafts.com. That's my main woodworking blog, and there's some links to other things as well. There's a link actually to my YouTube channel as well there. And yes, I have a free download, which is called 10 Beginner Tips on Getting Set Up for Woodworking. So it covers some of the things that I covered here in the podcast, but it has some additional tips on how to get set up properly so that you can have an enjoyable woodworking hobby.
So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so people can find you and grab your free gift.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when our next free HobbyScool online learning summit launches. The link is in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to hobbyschool.com, and that's HobbyScool with school without an H in it. Talk soon.